Welcome to the Harnessing Happiness podcast. Upbeat vibes generated and transferred to you. Now here's your host, Sarah J Naylor.
Hello and welcome to Harnessing Happiness with myself, Sarah J Naylor. Thank you for stopping on by and taking time to listen. I'm really delighted to have you with me. Today I have a fabulous, wonderful, gorgeous guest with me called Charlotte Jonsie, and I'm going to hand over to her, as I always do, because I love my guests introducing themselves because they do it so much better than I do. So Charlotte, over to you. The stage is yours.
I love it. Thank you for having me, Sarah. So I'm Charlotte Jonsie, and I am a mindset and business coach for ambitious, motivated, go-getting mummas. Like, I am the founder of Mumma on a Mission membership as well. And my mission in life, my deep purpose, is to help women redefine what it means to be a working mum in the modern world. I'm very, very passionate about that, about helping them build a side hustle or build a business or pivot in career after kids so that they've got more financial freedom, time, flexibility, so that they're doing it on their terms and they feel empowered to do that. Also very, very passionate as well about helping mums reach their goals without mum guilt.
Yes, I mean, you're doing so much.
That gives you a good...
Yeah, you're doing so much. And you've got an Instagram following sort of 33,000, which is just absolutely awesome. And you're very much about that sort of whole accepting yourself and empowering women to accept themselves, their body and where they are. But certainly postpartum, when people... I mean, it's many years since I've been postpartum. It's a long, long time. But, you're very much about that. And it's just... I love your post. I mean, expand a bit further. Just please do go into it in a bit more detail and what motivated you to do what you're doing.
God, you know what? I never imagined myself to be a mummy blogger, and that's no discredit to any mummy bloggers. I fell into it. I have always been on social media. I've got a decade of experience working for major global brands in the beauty industry. I championed change. I've always been an advocate for real, raw advertising, through content and communication. So I did that for like 10 years, and I fell pregnant in the pandemic 4 months into a relationship. So it's very quick. I also then had to move in with him very quick because we had to choose a household. So it was all very, this whirlwind. All of a sudden I was pregnant, living with this guy that, I obviously love and I'm still with. He's now my fiancé. But we had the most traumatic birth. Like, seriously, it was horrific. We spent 90 hours in labour to end in a C-section anyway. We nearly lost our little boy. And after that, I had post-natal depression, PTSD from that birth, and I really suffered and really struggled. And as someone who has always been into, rituals and habits, positivity, always knowing like what tools to use. I've always been into mindfulness. I've always done yoga. I've always been into how to relax, your nervous system. And I'm a big believer in building positive habits. And for someone who is like that, to have postnatal depression where you didn't even want to be here and couldn't function on a daily basis really hit me hard. And I just started posting about it on social media because I felt that there wasn't enough information out there for women to actually relate to. I couldn't find anyone or anything that I could relate to. All I kept seeing was this Instagram perfect woman with kids, and she looked amazing, and there was me feeling like I didn't want to be here. And then there was the other biggest shock, which was my postpartum body. I had this major overhang, never expected to have that. My stomach literally looked like a different stomach. And I also started posting about that on Instagram because, again, couldn't see those kind of images. And I was just desperate to kind of relate to someone. That just started to build my audience. People just started to follow because I started to be very real, raw and honest about motherhood and what it comes with, and my postnatal depression and how I overcame it. Something else that I'm extremely passionate about, which is helping women to reconnect with themselves and their identity after motherhood, because you are born as a mum. Everything out there was about the baby, everything. And of course that's important and we need that information, but what about mummy too? What about mum's mental health? What about her mindset? What about her going through, like, how she deals with her postpartum body? What about learning, there's not that much information on how to deal with your C-section. You go to the doctors and it's like, okay, yeah, 6-week checkup, you're fine, great, off you go.
Oh, gosh.
And then you're like,
oh my word.
And what? And after that, we had quite a traumatic time. I was in and out of hospital because I kept getting infections in my C-section. I was also separated from my baby because of the COVID restrictions, was in hospital. I was breastfeeding. He wasn't allowed to be with me. So he was considered another person. So they completely went against the NICE guidelines, the World Health Organization. And, I did go to press. It was horrific, and I've been campaigning ever since as well for those rules to change, which have changed in some hospitals but haven't changed in more than enough, and I'm currently still working with an MP to make this happen. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, my gosh, that is so much. Just having a baby. I only ever had the one, and he was enough. He made up for half a dozen. But, I had a traumatic birth as well. Thankfully, I didn't end up with a C-section, but I was in labour for a very long period of time. And my natural childbirth went through from the TENS machine to gas and air to temazepam, pethidine, twice, I think, and then an epidural. Yes, and then he just didn't want to come out. Oh, that was it. And I forget to say that he was 2 weeks late. I had to be induced as well, and the first lot didn't work, and so they gave me a second lot, and then everything went into overdrive. And as you can tell, that was 23 years ago, and it's still quite fresh in my memory because it's anchored. And like you say, it's just. And then actually, 2 or 3 days later, they sent me home with him, and I hadn't got a clue what to do. So great. It's absolutely awesome that what you've been doing for new mums, Charlotte, because it's just when you haven't got anybody to sort of turn to, and sadly my ex-husband was very much, you don't need your mum on help, you can get on with it, and I didn't have any support from him particularly either, which wasn't great. But that's another story, and we're not going into the doom and gloom. But it's just absolutely amazing what you're doing and what you've been through, and I know things for you are sort of changing as well now, aren't they, as you're how old's your little boy now?
Yeah, he's 15 months.
15 months, wow.
Yeah, and again, just, moving into when you go back to work and having all of this self-doubt and these confidence issues that a lot of mums have when they're like trying to weigh up whether they want to go back to work, because actually the cost of childcare is horrific. So you have these dilemmas. It's like, well, I don't want to stay at home though, but I feel, financially I have to stay at home because it doesn't make any sense. I'd be working to literally take my child to nursery. But then it's not giving women the options or the flexibility or the choice to actually say, this is what I want and I need, rather than relying, because, it takes away our independence when we rely on a partner as well. And a lot of mums then end up feeling like they are suppressed, they're feeling stuck, they're feeling unhappy, they're feeling, there's all sorts of mental health problems that come with that as well. And I'm a big believer in, ensuring that mums fill up their mental health cup, their energy cup, because if they don't prioritise themselves, then their energy affects everybody else around them, including their kids. So if they're filling up themselves and they're doing things for themselves too, which is totally acceptable, and you don't need to ask for permission for that, it's in fact saying, this is my decision because I need to do this for me, because in turn it's going to affect everyone else around me, including my family. So to be a better, partner, mother, colleague, business owner, friend, whatever you want to be, you need to put yourself first too. We always put ourselves at the bottom of the priority list, and I think this comes from a lot of, it comes down the generational line, unfortunately, the kind of traditional mother belief systems of what a mother should be. And I think, modern day, things have changed. Women can be breadwinners. They can go to work. They can do things for their family. But it's actually changing the narrative of that, because for a long time it's been frowned upon or judged, like if a mother goes back to work and she does her thing, but nobody says to the dad, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. Nobody says that, do they?
Absolutely not. It's historical, though, isn't it? And it's generation upon generation upon generation. Although, I think if you sort of go back in history, I think, there were times when women did work more and went back to work more. And it's key to actually also highlight the importance of what you've just brought up about, as a mum, looking after yourself and having me time, but generally valuing yourself and having that time for yourself. Invariably, wherever you are, if you need that time for you to be happy, to be yourself, for that to radiate out generally within relationships. I say most importantly when you are a mum, because it is pretty knackering, and your body's already taken a big hit as it is, because you've had that time, that sort of 9 months while you've grown this mini human inside your body, and then had to give birth to it as well, and that's a shock to the system. Like you said, and then you're left with this sort of body that wasn't the body that you had before, and it's going, hello, what happened here? I've been poorly just recently, and that's made me reflect, even now at 56, that time and just being and having that time for yourself is so valuable, because if you're grumpy, it's going to radiate out within your family and your whole network. But actually, if you're feeling good, if you've got that time for yourself, the opposite happens, which is what you're talking about.
And it's really interesting, because this is something that I love to do with my clients, and I love to do with mums, because it's very well known that successful people have these healthy habits, these positive habits. And a lot of them are, mindfulness, affirmations, they're, movement. And a lot of these things aren't built for mums in mind, because when you've got interruptions, you've got kids.
Why? Mum.
The first thing you do, exactly.
No, but Mum.
Exactly.
Am I being an annoying child, Charlotte? Mum.
I love it.
But it's true.
It's true, and they're not built for mums in mind. And I believe, that these really are so important to your general overall happiness. They are your foundations. Like, if you've got them in place and you've got a strong mindset, you can fall back on that. So I'm a big believer in building them in, and that is through habit stacking. Habit stacking is when, as for example, you wake up in the morning, the first thing you do is you go and make your cup of tea. Then you will go and turn the TV on, and then you'll go and have your shower. You do all of these things subconsciously. You don't even think about them, because they are just habitual. So those are the things that we need to stack the behaviour. So building in those positive routines. So as an example, I wake up, the first thing I do is gratitude. But I do that out loud. I can't write it down. My baby's crying. I have to go and see to him. But I will always do that. Second thing, affirmations. Put them on the TV, on YouTube. They're playing in the background. They're for my little boy to listen to. They're for me to listen to while I make my coffee.
Oh, I love that.
While he's feeding, then I will do some shamanic shaking, as an example, to really liven up my energy and to get my vibration high. You can do this when your kids are older as well. You can do it with them, build that into their routine. Or, things like your evening rituals, making sure that you actually do take 5 minutes, and, you've only got really 5 minutes because you're knackered, to actually just sit there and do a mindfulness meditation, or sit there and do some journaling, sit there and do some gratitude, building in these really healthy habits, or building in tapping as a way of, being able to calm your nervous system when it's about to, blow. Because a lot of the time, you're listening to children all the time, on and on and on. And you have to find ways to help yourself in those times. So I'm a big believer in actually building those in, but making it realistic for mums, rather than these traditional ways of doing things, doing like these 7 positive habits in the morning. That doesn't work for a mum. Like, she hasn't got all that time.
No. So what you're doing is you're breaking it down into bite-sized, manageable chunks that are realistic. They're sort of time-bound. They can be done whilst you're doing something else, but you're programming your subconscious with that music that's playing, those affirmations that are playing. And I know you referred to tapping, but some people might not know what tapping is, and I don't know whether you want to allude further to that. I mean, I've done EFT, which is emotional freedom technique, but I've also got the tapping app from the Ortners that I've got on my phone that sometimes I will download, and that's really nice to use. So I don't know, do you want to explain a bit more about tapping?
I, again, always take whatever the intervention is and adapt it to mum. So tapping, you can't always just go off and do some tapping. So it might be simply doing it underneath a desk or while you're on the move, and it might just be taking your thumb, putting it across on your fingers. You can't see me right now, but imagine just tapping each of your fingertips, and you would say, peace begins with me, peace begins with me, peace begins with me. And you tap each of your fingertips, and this brings your nervous system down. And you can do that anywhere, at any point, at any time, at home or on the go. And I think that's the most important thing. Again, another one is tapping on your collarbones and saying, I am safe, I am loved, I am safe, I am loved, and repeating that over and over again until you feel your nervous system calming down. So it's just introducing those things that you can build into your daily routine, into your life, that actually they are micro moments but actually have a compounding effect overall to your well-being. And that's really, really important, because people always have this view of, I'll be happy when this happens, I'll be happy when this happens, I'll be happy when my partner gives up, more of his time to look after the kids, I'll be happy when I get that house, I'll be happy when the kids go to school. There's always this destination, and happiness is not a destination. I don't believe that. It is about finding those micro moments of joy every single day and ensuring that you build in those positive habits and rituals every single day to have overall increase in well-being, productivity. It boosts your mood. You can deal with things and daily tasks with better temperament. It will help improve your mental health, and I'm not talking clinical, by the way, I'm just talking in general terms. I'm super passionate about that, and making sure that mums know this and have that knowledge to actually implement it and really do it. And when I talk about habit stacking, this is not my intervention. This is from James, I can't remember the author's name, but Atomic Habits, it's actually the book that I read. It's an incredible book, and it talks about the science, really, of our behaviours and why we do things. 90% of us live in our subconscious. It's automatic what we do. So we have to be so much more conscious about, what we do if we want to feel better and improve our mood.
The power of the subconscious, like you we're talking about that sort of the habits that you can form, and we aren't our behaviour. We can change our behaviour at any time once we choose to do that, and we have to be mindful of it, because we have to use the subconscious and create the neural pathways to do things automatically. Otherwise, we'd be forever thinking, now what do I need to do to put one foot in front of the other? Oh, right, that's that. We never get anywhere. So the subconscious does have to take all this over. It's constantly processed. It's thousands. I can't remember the figures now, but it's thousands of bytes of information that it's deleting, distorting, or processing and accepting at any one time. And our senses are all on. And so the conscious mind can only cope, I think it's between about 5 and 7 things at any one time. So it's being mindful about which you choose to focus in on. And it is about focusing in on the positives, because actually if you start to focus in on all the negatives, that's what you attract back into you. So actually if you're programming your mind, like you were just saying, with all the positive stuff, and you're doing this sort of the tapping, and I just love that is just such a fabulously easy tool, and I really thank you very much for that to pass on to the listeners, because that is something that everybody can do anywhere in the world, anytime, any given moment, just to go, whatever it is, I am loved, I'm cared for, I'm happy, whatever it is that's true to you, and you can repeat that. And it's about what we tell ourselves is what we believe and what we project out, and then what you project out is what you get back. It's a vicious circle, really, but we'll call it a nice circle, a happy circle instead.
If you're enjoying the Harnessing Happiness podcast, there are plenty of free resources available for download at sarahjnaylor.com, where you can also find out more about her APE mindset. It's all about acceptance, perspective, and energy. Just visit sarahjnaylor.com.
What you're doing is so powerful, though, Charlotte. It's so amazing and so impactful and so positive. And it's, that is obviously why, you've got such a high following on Instagram. That isn't just what you do, is it? I mean, you alluded to it earlier. You work with women on a one-to-one basis in business and help them get a side hustle and do other things. So what sort of things I'm just curious, what sort of things do you help them to do? Because I'm wholeheartedly passionate about aligning people with their talents and their passion so they're doing something they actually love doing, which you obviously did with your Instagram and your blogging initially, because it was that's what grew, and that is evidence that what you focus in grows because it's something you've been passionate about. So what is it you work with women in, and how do you get them to connect with their passions and do a side hustle? How does that all work?
So I actually have like a system, and I know it works because I've got an amazing testimonial. So I work with women, mums in particular, who are very motivated. They're go-getting, they are ambitious, they've got goals, but mum guilt usually gets in the way. So it's about helping them really see their vision, their higher self so clearly that they want to step into her. And that's what I help them do. And when I talk about higher self, it's reconnecting with that person that they want to be. So a lot of mums, I find, say, I miss the person I used to be. I remember I used to be so fun and carefree and this and that, and there would be so many things that they miss about their old lives. But I actually say to them, let's get excited, because this is an opportunity for you to completely reinvent yourself. That this is really exciting. So instead of holding on to who you used to be, take those elements of what you loved about that and then merge them with the person that you are now. Because actually, when you become a mother, you become, I believe, like a really amazing whole person. It gives you something else, another branch to your tree.
Yes.
Like a big branch,
yes.
maybe it's the roots.
It shifts your perspective on your whole life completely. I remember that happening myself. It does. It's so impactful.
I think it's an invitation for you as a mother to say, okay, who do I want to be? Who is that person? And I love that transformation. I love when we actually reconnect mums to what they truly deep down desire. I do a lot of intuitive work, a lot of tapping into what it is that, who you are, a lot of confidence work, lots of identity, embodiment, mindset. That all comes before whatever the goal is, because they'll come to me, I want to launch a business, or I want to make money from home. I've got this side hustle idea, but I don't know how to make it happen. I don't have my self-belief. They'll come to me with that tangible goal, but actually when I strip it all back, it usually comes back to they don't know who they are, they don't know how they show up, they don't know what their mission is, they don't know what they need and want. So when they actually have all the foundations, and when I talk about, my kind of proven system, that is self-awareness. What are your belief systems? What's coming up? Why are you talking about yourself in the way that you do? So the way that I like to do this with my clients is, first of all, we actually understand them, like what's their inner dialogue. I like to call her the inner bitch because she's someone who tries to sabotage me all the time. I have a set of beliefs that come up. So beliefs are, how we think, feel and behave. They influence everything around that. So if you've got a negative set of beliefs, usually they come from childhood conditioning. They could come from adult life experiences, what we do, what we hear. We create those thought patterns and create them over and over again. I like to help my clients get conscious of that. What are the beliefs that they're coming up with? So then that leads me on to the next step, which is self-awareness. So really understanding the conscious and subconscious mind, like what are the beliefs, stories do we tell ourselves, where do they come from, like how do we become so aware that we can then change them. And that's when we go on to the next step, which is reprogramming the subconscious mind. And I do lots of different interventions, usually either positive psychology or NLP techniques to reprogram, and do a lot of reframing.
Oh, love the reframe.
You've got to, haven't you? And you've got to completely practice it over and over again. It's like getting on a bike. You know, you don't really know how to do it to begin with. You have to keep practicing to be amazing at it.
Absolutely.
And eventually you will start to think in that way, or at least you will be conscious of your triggers that you go, the inner bitch is coming up again.
Consciously incompetent, before you get to consciously competent, and before you come unconsciously competent. The four stages of competency. I missed the first one, which is unconsciously incompetent.
I love it. And then rituals and habits, you know, integrating them into our lives, being... You know, this is your affirmations, gratitude, visualizations, your tapping, your shamanic shaking, really making sure that you've got solid foundations for that. Then we do higher self work. So this is really your identity and your embodiment. And I like to do this exercise, which is called a future you. So really stepping into that person that you want to be. Usually most women that do it with me cry because they realise how big of a gap where they are, what's holding them back to where they actually truly deep down want to be.
But that's the beauty and power of coaching, isn't it? And you bringing that out of people. I know when I work with coaching clients, invariably a box of hankies is in the first session, because it is releasing, it's allowing and having that voice of what it is that you do see for yourself. But so much, as you said, from the childhood, from the conditioning, from the experiences that we've had as an adult, you know, it just starts to hold you back, and people try and hold you back. And actually, we're all born to be magnificent, and it's just taking that time. And I often allude to it, that people spend more time speccing out a car or investing in the car than they ever do in themselves. But when they take the time to do something, you know, along the lines that you've explained and explored, and you carry on doing, that's when the magic happens, isn't it, Charlotte?
Oh, absolutely. And most women want confidence. Most women say, I've got a lack of confidence, but actually this is the root cause is lack of self-esteem. And so, you know, really focusing on why you have a lack of self-esteem. And we mentioned this at the beginning of the podcast, of like how much value you put on yourself. Like, do you know who you are? Do you act in line with the person that you actually want to be? Or are you holding yourself back? Are you just listening to the inner bitch inside your head and going, okay, I'm just going to fall in line with what she's saying, rather than actually challenging yourself to go, no, I'm going to step outside my comfort zone. This feels uncomfortable, but I know, but it's growth. Confidence is created in action. So the more we do something, the more we build confidence. And, you know, you've got to step outside of your comfort zone and feel uncomfortable if you want to grow in confidence. Like that.
And growth generally. That's that whole growth thing. It's when, I mean, we call it a comfort zone, but actually it's a familiarity. It's being just, we are where we are, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's actually comfortable for us. But when you have that confidence to step out, that's when the magic happens again, because actually, what's the worst that can happen? It's just like, do it and go for it. But I understand, you know, it's building that up, as you obviously that you do with your clients, and it just sounds amazing what you're doing with them. And just, I can imagine you see a lot of transformation.
Yes, so I've been doing this on a one-to-one basis, and then in a group format, but very small group. And I've just launched my membership, which is called Mumma on a Mission membership, which is basically a monthly rolling membership that mums can have access to all those tools, interventions, resources in a members lounge. They get live coaching on a monthly basis. They get guest experts that come in to talk to them about all different subjects, from, you know, business, career, to mindset, to mental health, to relationships, because I believe you need all of it in order for you to feel great. You know, if there's one area that's lacking, usually it has a domino effect on the rest of the areas. I couldn't find anything in my postpartum period out there that had everything all in one. You'd go to a Facebook group, you'd have that community. You wouldn't have any access to resources. You just have to hear everyone else's opinion, which is great at times, you know, when you need some support. But actually, what about having some professional support, people who are qualified in this area? And then, you know, I found like apps that were also community based. Then I also found, you know, there's mum coaches out there, but I couldn't find a place where I could just have this all-in-one professional and personal development area that you could actually just tap into whenever you needed it. And that's what I've created, because I'm so passionate about mums really helping themselves. So whether that is to improve their mental health, shift their mindset, get body confident, or reach their goals without the guilt.
It's just awesome. And it was obviously waiting for you to come along to identify that niche, Charlotte. And that's what you've done. And oh gosh, I really wish you every success with it, because obviously, you know, it's like with my podcast, the more you can spread knowledge and wisdom and reach people and help people, the happier and healthier the world will be as a result. But what makes you a happy person?
I would say what makes me happy is freedom. So I've realised that since I set up my business, how important freedom is to me, and to have the flexibility to be able to be and choose my hours and be with my little boy. When I am going for a walk with him, or I'm taking him somewhere and I've got a coffee in hand and it's sunshine, it might be a crisp morning, I'm listening to a podcast while he's in the buggy, that for me is happiness in a bottle. And I wish that I could literally, you know, put it in there and just for it to just stay there and me to just unlock it every single time. But, you know, he's growing up and I know it's going to change.
Oh, yes.
But that's happiness.
It keeps changing. You just think you've got into a routine with a child and you just go, oh, it's not happening like that anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, it's not happening like that anymore. But that's that. I just had a really wonderful image of that. You painted such a beautiful picture. So thank you for that. But what about your... you've got such a positive mindset, and you've mentioned all those sort of challenges that you had straight into relationship. I mean, my relationship's lockdown relationship as well. I've been into 18 months.
Yes, I remember.
But yes, I've not done the baby bit. My baby bits have boiled and they're all dried up. I'm on the other side.
Well, interestingly, I forgot to say something, actually, is that my partner's got 2 children. Older children, so I took on 2 stepchildren as well as a baby as well. So it was like, there you go,
wow,
the universe.
I think you need an extra brownie badge for that. Good Lord.
So navigating that as well has been interesting.
Yes, because I take my hat off to you, because I'd literally never even I had my son when I was 34, and I'd never even held a baby before I had him, and it's like suddenly, oh my God, what do I do with this?
It is that feeling, isn't it? Because I wasn't even sure I wanted children, genuinely. Like, I always said, I'm not really sure. Like, if it was, I'd be about 35. I'm 30. So it definitely happened way before I was ready and in the most surreal way, but I wouldn't change it for the world.
No, things happen. The thing is, in life, you know, you think you know what you want, but you actually get what you need. And obviously you got what you needed. Without your relationship, your son, you wouldn't have, and we wouldn't even be having this conversation now. And it's really interesting. I think, the powers of synchronicity and what happens. And I love looking back and looking at things and seeing how things have fallen into place and being really mindful of that, because I don't want to go off too much a tangent, but I've always been mindful with my recruitment business of the part I play in people's lives, whether I'm telling about a job, putting them forward for a job, or because all these things, everything's moving. You've got all these sliding door moments. It's just it's fascinating when you take a step back. Another subject for another day. So how have you used your positive mindset then, really, to overcome challenging situations? Although I guess in many respects you've alluded to a lot of that with your last 18 months.
Yeah, if that's adversity for you, there you go. Exactly. Interestingly, something that I have realised, I've had a bit of an epiphany moment, is that I've actually been working in mindset for over a decade. And that's because as a child, I had an extremely traumatic childhood, abuse, alcoholism, and I come from a lot of adversity anyway. Come from a very poor background, council estate, lots of adversity and experience. But I've never taken a victim mentality. But what I will say is I started my personal development journey very early on. You know, I started reading books from a very young age. I mean, thank God we have, you know, access to resources now that we can connect on this kind of level. And I've been able to connect with incredible women who have been through traumatic events or, you know, overcome the most amazing adversity. And I think as well that really helps when you know that it's possible for you as well. And I think that's what I would say in terms of my positive mindset. I've had to adopt it from a very young age, but it hasn't always been easy. I've always struggled with my mental health, if I'm honest. I've always had to battle against it because of my conditioning, that there's been a lot of things that have come up, and I also then got myself into abusive relationships because of childhood conditioning, which I've done a lot of healing and and I'd say to anybody who, you know, is struggling with their mindset to begin with, what healing have you done? Like, what is it that is coming up for you? Because there's a difference between, you know, having a negative and positive mindset, because naturally human beings have a negative bias anyway, but there's a difference between having a negative mindset that is really detrimental to everything that you do because you haven't done the healing work. And that's where I'd say that would be your starting point if you were to ever go, okay, I need to make changes to this because it's affecting my whole world, my whole life.
And it's okay to reach out. It's okay to ask for help. In fact, do it. I mean, there's so many therapies out there. And if one doesn't work, it doesn't mean to say they won't all work. And if one doesn't work, it might just be the practitioner. You know, you've got to try these things. I mean, the amount of sort of different, you know, you've mentioned shamanic shaking. I mean, I've done sort of shamanic work. I've done my, you know, life coaching qualification, which incorporated NLP. I've done further NLP. I've done hypnotherapy. I've done regressional hypnotherapy. I've done EFT. I've done Reiki. I've trained in Reiki. You know, and it's just all that inner work and all that clearing and all that unblocking and releasing the energy. And as you say, and it's you know, enable you to do the healing work and show. There's an acceptance that I always talk about as well. You know, accepting where you are and what's happened, and not holding on to stuff, and changing your perspective and shifting your energy accordingly. And the power of the mind is phenomenal, but you have to do that work yourself. It's not for somebody else, and you have to be ready for change. You have to want to have that moment of going, actually, I'm wearing this coat and it doesn't fit me. This coat that I've become, you know, I want to be somebody else, and you can be. I mean, I'm not being trite or lightweight about it. It takes work, it takes time, doesn't it? And you'll attest to that. But I also believe, and I don't know about you, but I believe we choose the lifetimes we come into for the experiences that we're going to have, for us to enable our spirit to enable to grow and evolve and develop. Because it is about that work, it is about that level of enlightenment, it is about raising the vibrational frequency, and then being able to do as we've been doing today, sharing that message of hope and, you know, lightness for other people to hook into, to be able to do the work for themselves and find people that can help and who resonate with them.
And it's really incredible listening to you, Sarah, because you're so far in that journey, and that's amazing. And we're so connected to women who are also on that journey, or they know all about that stuff. And you talk about shamanic shaking and someone goes, oh yeah, I know. But actually to the average, you know, and I say that in inverted commas, like the average woman, it's really interesting when they come to me, they have never even dived into this. They don't even know where to begin, how to start, how to even improve their mental health. There's also a lot of information out there in the internet that can be very overwhelming as well. It's like, oh, I don't know, like I hear this and I hear that and I hear this, and where do I start? Where's the starting point? And it's really interesting because listening to you've done so much, and likewise so have I, and I think we're very similar in the way that we are just obsessed with growth and development, so we just immerse ourselves into it, and I love it. But it's interesting, to the average person, actually they get very stuck, or they don't know where to begin, or they actually are dubious as to is it going to actually work, or is it going to give me this result? And we have been, again, so conditioned to invest in things like, you'd go and get your car fixed, you'd go and pay for your hair to be done, you'd go to a personal trainer to, if you wanted to lose some weight or get fit. But when it comes to our minds and working our minds, we go, oh, should I do that? Should I have invested that? Should I go for that? We've come so far, but I do think for the average person, they're not there yet. And it's a lot of us to inform, to educate, to inspire, to motivate, to actually go, you can be more positive, you can live a happier life, you can have an overall better well-being if you do these things.
Absolutely. You're absolutely spot on. I mean, I believe life's an illusion of our own creation. So it is about, understanding. I'm just as normal as anybody else, and that I can get caught up in the eye of a storm sometimes and go, because that sort of desire for that personal development is my overdone strength. It's like, oh, look, shiny new thing, I want to do something this, I want to learn this, and I want to do that. And I go, holy moly, no. And my big lesson more recently is that I've got to step back. I've done a lot of personal development work, as you've just alluded to. There's a lot, and there was a lot was always already inherently within me. I grew up with an aunt that had got all these amazing books on a bookshelf, and I was fascinated with stuff from a very, very early age, and sort of understood it without actually having to question it. So it's always been inherently within me. And then when I ended a 20-year relationship and got divorced and started to read books, I went, there's a name for the way I feel. Oh, this is called that, is it? Oh, there's all these aha moments, but it was identifying words that was part of who I was anyway. But it's interesting. But once you do get on that personal development journey, you don't want to stop, because it's just absorbing and it's just fascinating. And I would really encourage anybody, even if it's just at the moment, listening to podcasts like this one, or having conversations, or just getting a book from the library, or just doing a little bit of reading. But if it doesn't resonate with you, if it feels overwhelming, leave it. Go for something that's like really quite straightforward, that you read, that's not, you don't want it to be hard work. I mean, I will put away books that, there's The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. I mean, he's a great author. I have tried to read that book several times over. I've even tried to listen to his CD player. Don't recommend it in the car, nearly fell asleep. It's not written in a style that is right for the way I like to read. And so what's right for one isn't right for the other. Find something that you feel aligned with. Find something that connects with you. If it doesn't, straight away leave it. It doesn't matter. You can go back to it in 6 months, 10 months, or never go back to it at all again. But find your own flow, and you'll know it, because you'll get it once you see it, and it will feel right. But to finish, Charlotte, do you have any sort of final top tips for my listeners to take away with them, that they can sort of simply apply today, this afternoon, right now, whatever it is they're listening?
Okay, my top tips are to get aligned with who you are as a person, and to go on an acceptance journey of who you are. A lot of people, especially with social media now, do a lot of comparison. They're looking at other people's lives, they want what they have, and remember, that's a highlight reel. But one of my things, especially because I speak to women specifically, is I just always hear them come to me with lack of self-belief, lack of self-esteem, no confidence. And I'd always say to them that it starts with acceptance of actually really understanding what you bring to the world, what value you put on yourself. Nobody is going to say to you when you die, oh, do you remember what she looked like? They're not. They're going to remember how you made them feel, what you did for them, and how you showed up in the world. So I would say that's my biggest tip, just in life in general. I think it all starts with, I keep coming back to this, reconnecting back to who you are. And when you feel out of alignment, come back to that again, because your intuition is the most powerful and free resource that you have got available to you.
Absolutely. I love that, Charlotte, and I endorse it, and it is so impactful. Acceptance is something that I am a real advocate for as well. It's accepting yourself for who you are, all your kinks, your wrinkles, your foibles, your this, that and the other. I mean, okay, if there's stuff that you don't think's right about you, you can change stuff, but it's a fundamentally accepting who you are and discovering who you are as well, because there's stuff that you might have. I mean, I've discovered things about myself in the last 18 months that I enjoy doing that I had no idea about before, and it's embracing what fires you up, what ignites that fire in your belly and your heart, makes your heart sing, and you get excited about. And you'll know this as well as I do, when you're working with somebody and when they're the body language and the facial expressions and the things like that, when people start to talk about what it is that they like, and so do the mirror work. If you're talking about stuff and you can see your eyes light up when you're talking about something, that's firing you up. If you're talking about your job and working on spreadsheets, and you can hear my tone of my voice going down, because that's my experience of sort of spreadsheets, that's not going to fire you up. Find something that does, and as you say, accept who you are and go from there and use that free resource of intuition. Oh, Charlotte, it's been wonderful. Thank you so much. So how do people find you? Come on, tell them how they can find you.
Honestly, this has been amazing. You can find me on Instagram. That's Charlotte Jonsie, and it's spelt Jonsie, just for anyone who needs to find me. And also, I've launched my membership, which you can find at mummasonamission.co.uk.
Thank you again so much, Charlotte, for your amazing time, and thank you all for listening. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please do rate, review, follow, subscribe, do all the things that you can do to help us spread happiness globally. And it's really exciting, so I've got audiences everywhere, so wherever you are in the world, I'm really, really excited, and thank you so much for listening, because it really does make my day. When I look at the stats and see the figures and see where you're listening from, it does make a massive difference to me too, and it keeps me encouraged to keep on recording these episodes. So this has been me, Sarah J Naylor, at Harnessing Happiness with the fabulous Charlotte Jonsie. Thank you, and until next time, lots of love and have a wonderful life. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Harnessing Happiness podcast with Sarah J Naylor. If you took value from the content, please follow the show on your podcast app. And to find out more about Sarah's ape mindset, visit sarahjnaylor.com. That's